Yeah. I would now like to call upon Shravan Srinivas from Datwrkz. The topic is measurement. The devil is in the details. I mean, all of us make games, but where do you do it? How do you monetize it? Shravan is here to share some data and tell us more. Shravan, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Hello? Am I audible? All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shravan. Viagra was introduced to the world in 1996. The medicine which was initially meant to be sold as a drug to help hypertensive patients, is today sold as a drug to enhance pleasure. How this medicine, sildenafil, also now known as Viagra, was marketed made all the difference at Pfizer. The journey from using it to help hypertensive patients, but then understanding its key differentiator, could only be done by analyzing and measuring what its users would benefit from. Hi, I'm Shravan from Datwrkz. I'm here to talk about how measurements can help turn your BP medication into a billion-dollar sex industry. Just kidding. I'm here to fill you in on why measurement is key to helping your game succeed. The devil, of course, lies in the details. A bit about me. How did I end up here? I've been closely associated with the web and mobile monetization space since 2011. My interest lies in providing solutions to businesses to help them scale. I helped scale an ad network business to $1 million ARR and later went on to work in roles that included being a country sales manager for InMobi in Malaysia, where I was tasked with handling the brand business. And later on, I went on to lead a team at Amazon to help sellers scale their spends on advertising, thereby helping them scale their businesses. So, moving on. What do we do at Datwrkz? We help scale businesses, we help them monetize, we help them dashboard everything that they do when they get their business information from, whether that be platforms, whether that be their games, whether it is basically understanding how to analyze the user's journey and the revenue that the user generates for the business. We help build cohorts. We help you understand what cohorts to build to analyze your game better that suits your business interest. And we also provide business insights by digging into your competitors and helping you understand how they are doing well and how you can match up and probably leave them in the dust behind while you grow. Some of the games that we try and work with are hyper-casual, RMG, kids, sports, midco. We are a Nazara company, and we do a lot of scaling for Nazara Publishing and other companies, the entire Nazara portfolio. What's the market opportunity looking like? So there's going to be a 5x increase in spends in-ad game revenue between 2016 and 29. There's almost going to be a $100 billion increase in less than a decade. What does that mean? This means that brands that you know, like Coke, Pepsi, Puma, Adidas, all of them are beginning to warm up to the fact that they need to begin advertising on gaming inventory. The game developer now needs to understand how to build a game that is brand safe, as well as factor in the various costs of user acquisition, etc., while they build the game. What about India? The ad revenue is set to grow at a steady 8 to 12% year on year, and in under a decade, that chunk will double. What about the ARPU? And this is for India. The ARPU growth is back on track. I think there was a dip during the pandemic, but seasonality and worldly factors do affect these things. Microtransactions can increase tenfold if the developers begin paying a little more attention to how this is implemented within their game. Coming down to the topic, why measure? Everybody here, I'm assuming, is here to grow their business or to grow their game. To grow, you need to understand your users. To understand your users, you need to understand how they can be retained in your game and how they engage with your game. And once they do this, you finally get down to the green, right? You're able to monetize your business. And when you have the money, you're able to invest it in either a new version of the game, increasing the scale of the game, or have investors show interest in your game. So, the game growth life cycle, how do you reach 10 million users? I've taken an example over here, and this is a business study where you cross the chasm. There are two proverbial chasms that you really need to cross, right? When you get to 100K users, then when you get to 500K users, and then the rest. Across this entire life cycle, you'll probably need to pay attention, and this comes from a marketing lens here, right? I'm here to talk about how to market your game better. And you need to start thinking about how, from a marketer's perspective, how do I make my game ready for the marketer to take it to the next level, whether that's you, whether that's a team you engage, whether that's an employee you get. If it's an employee, you need to know what sort of KRAs to set. If it's a team that you engage, you need to know what to tell them and what sort of feedback you could potentially receive from that team you engaged. And if it's you, then this is your guide, right? User acquisition, you need to, within the first few years, understand your price discovery, your geography and demographic discovery. And during the later stages, you look at running the campaigns for growth, for ROAS, and re-engaging users towards the end of the game's life cycle. When it comes to retention, you initially start off by targeting D7 users, which is your day 7 users. You move on to then seeing how your day 30 users are doing, because there are more stats that will speak to that and help you understand why you need to measure that. Then you optimize towards engagement, you optimize towards revenue, and you begin optimizing towards re-engagement because you know your pool of users are kind of coming down. The virality of the game is very important. Sharing, reviews are very, very important and crucial during the first 100,000 users, 100,000 installs, because this really determines how the game is going to, become big, right, and go to the next level. Post that, you can look at reels, you can look at broadcasts, you can look at community forums, and eventually you land up at nostalgia. We do have quite a few games that rely on nostalgia now to kind of promote themselves. So I wouldn't put it past every game to reach the end of its life cycle. There are few, of course, there are rules, exceptions to every norm, but most games kind of trend towards the nostalgia bit towards the end of the user life cycle. You have ad revenue, you have IAPs and engagement. I'll let you go through that. I think as we go through the slides, we'll begin delving more into the tenets of growth, which is user acquisition, retention, and revenue, right? What are the matrices that you need to begin looking when you begin acquiring users? One is your CTRs. You need to know what creatives give you how much engagement from the advertising. You need to know what your cost per install is or cost per paying user is. You need to do a channel or cohort analysis, and by this I mean whether a Google is doing better than a Meta or a AppLovin, for example. You need to know who is bringing you high-value users. You need to know whether they're paying users, whether they're not paying users. You need to know which demographics your game is hitting, right? That will help you understand whether you're spending your money on the right sort of user acquisition. You need to do a geo-analysis. Very interesting fact, sometime back we realized that some of our games are performing really well in LATAM, and these were primarily free-to-play games. So here's an insight and a tidbit for you. And they tend to recover better in terms of ad revenue itself in those countries versus in India, right? The LTV by source, by virality by social, so you need to also be measuring your lifetime value, and that depends on when the user came and until when they stuck around. So let's say you have a March 2010 cohort, you need to understand what the lifetime of that cohort generated for you. And below are the good to have practices, creative testing, testing different market channels, etc., etc. I'll let you take a peek at that. So what do we do for user acquisition? We need to, first of all, understand that if you're looking to scale seriously, we need to have an MMP. Otherwise, this is really going to be difficult to do. An MMP is a mobile measurement platform. This is what essentially helps you cohort users and build that intelligence. Identify successful strategies, right? You need to know which UA to target, which demographic to target, interests, app events. So whether you want to drive a particular marketing effort into having the user cross level 2 or having the user transact within level 1, etc., etc. Objective driven. Let's say you form a thesis, I want streamers. How do you get streamers, right? You start targeting users who are between 18 to 24, people who like Twitch, like PewDiePie, and probably like simulation games. And then you want to benchmark that user acquisition strategy by seeing whether that user acquisition strategy gave you the desired session lengths, right? That's a very, very back-end way without even getting into which user streamed your game or didn't stream your game. Virality, you got to measure the K factor. The formula is given, a K factor value of greater than 1 is desirable. This means essentially that at least one install or one user refers one person. You need to incentivize users, attract new users by giving them incentives. Attract new users by giving existing users incentive to attract new users. And the gained users through this incentivized technique also need to be incentivized so that they know that they are being appreciated for coming and playing the game. Test the acceptance rate of these various invites, see which ones work, which ones don't, and then measure, seeing which invites brought you good engagement, revenue, etc., etc. Retention. You need to see your day 0 to day 7 retention monitoring. This is very, very important to understand whether the game is performing well, whether the users are engaged at the get-go. The game intro and sign up. A lot of games have lengthy tutorials, so you need to understand where the drop-off lies and enhance that tutorial to fit into that timeline so that the user doesn't drop off. Level progression analysis, I'm sure a lot of you gamers understand that if you have the tough levels coming right up ahead, it's going to be difficult for you to have the user stick around. You also need to have visits from acquisition strategy and DAO contribution. So see which acquisition strategy is bringing you more daily active users. And you need to have player engagement link strategies where you see which user acquisition channel or strategy is giving you more player engagement, right? You also need to see how the users are churning out. And you can do all this with the number of various tactics given below, which is A/B testing, check for drop-offs, etc., etc. Some best practices for retention. You have daily sign-on bonuses, which are great, have people coming back. You have personalized experiences where you cohort users into different segments and have different game flows. You have discounting, where you discount heavily for users who have engaged but left your game. A reminder cohorting, this works really well for RMG, where you understand when the user is actually coming to play the game, and then right before that time, you send them an invitation, right? Or you send them a pop-up notification on their notification bar. Some engagement best practices, mixing up the gameplay. You might want to have different sort of gameplays to have the user engaged rather than just one sort of gameplay during the entire game. A meaningful progression, people need to understand or be felt that they're being rewarded to play the game in terms of just feeling wholesome and feeling a sense of accomplishment that they've done something. Live events, this is something you can have where you have challenges, quizzes, a concert maybe, anything that can pique the user's curiosity, right? All this needs to be built into your game and be thought of while you're building the game right from the get-go if you really want to make a serious business out of your game. You can have time challenges where you create a sense of urgency for the user to participate repetitively and earn maybe larger rewards. And you have leaderboards. Leaderboards can be clubbed with their GPS coordinates to say that in this region, maybe they went to Goa for a vacation and they are the highest ranked user in Goa. Maybe when they come back to Bombay, they're not. Revenue metrics. So you want to calculate your average revenue per user and average revenue per paying user. That should have been ARPPU. These are very, very interesting and critical metrics to a business, because if you don't know where this is going, you don't know where your game is going and where your revenue strategy is going. You need to know what your average order values are. Very, very important when it comes to understanding whether your pricing strategy is right. The initial purchase trigger is something that you need to understand and probably enhance as time goes by, because if they are not purchasing, and if you have in-app purchases especially, right, when you start publishing your game, this is very important to try and convert as many number of users as possible right at the get-go. You, of course, need to monitor your LTV, which is very important and tells you how long it takes or how expensive the transacting user is to get to your game. And you also do a channel analysis, which is again, which marketing channel is bringing you how much revenue. So in terms of IAP revenue, you have some insights here. You have a low ticket size, but high value for your first or limited purchases so that games can then become viral. People go talk about it saying, hey, I received this many points or I received this many coins by just transacting for this much, and then your game kind of blows up. You categorize IAPs into different sorts, and as the game goes by, you'll kind of need to begin exploring what sort of in-app purchases you really need to have, whether they need to be boosters, progression, convenience, event-specific, once in a lifetime, etc., etc. This is very, very important when it comes to building your game, because then you have a wide set of optimization metrics when you're really looking at who's purchasing what and when. You have, again, you can begin clubbing this IAPs together and releasing them as packs. So this is the next step, right? Once you've figured and segmented your game into various aspects and where people can make purchases, you can then segment those and give combo packs, which is a great value for money for the user. There are multiple in-game currencies, and you can also have skip-its, right? Where if a user wants to or is forced to watch a rewarded video, you can, for a very small micro transaction, make them skip the rewarded video and thereby earning you some good revenue. And this can be as a pack or a subscription or as a one-time. What are the matrices for ad revenue? You have rewarded videos, you have sponsorship opportunities. This is something I see some of the more matured games also not focusing on. This is a great place where you get a ton of money for just positioning and positioning brands, logos in critical or very, very important spots in the gaming or the gamer's journey. Maximize the number of supply side partners or ad partners that you work with. Very important. You do an ad unit optimization to understand when you start building the game or when you're releasing a new version of the game, if you're put new placements anywhere within the game, you have to understand whether that is resulting in drop-off. So again, that ties back into retention and engagement to see whether that is annoying the user. You also see UA channel analysis to see which strategy brings you more users which are okay with ads versus which sort of strategies work for a paying user. Very, very important. The creatives messaging over here cannot be understated when you're promoting to these users. I think that's a big miss. I should have put that in. But a lot of the times we find different creatives along with the user strategy bring in very, very different sets of audiences. And when we do a cohort analysis of these audiences, we get very, very varying results. And of course, you do a drop-off analysis to see how much you're irritating your users with the ads and whether you need to cut down or whether you can increase. A/B testing needs to happen every time. It needs to be a part of your DNA. I understand as game enthusiasts, you guys would always want to focus on improving the gameplay, but these are aspects that will actually help with the business end of things. So some of the best practices for ad revenue, you have a status check every few weeks with the integrated SSPs, and this is very important because what often tends to happen, and having worked in brand sales and monetization, we find that different SSPs have different budgets from brands at different points in time, right? And sometimes SSP A might be giving you better value for money for where your chunk of users are in maybe the US for an interstitial, versus SSP B is doing a better job of rewarded videos. And that cuts down to my next point, where you need to watch out for festive seasons. You need to watch out for local events. Let's say your game has blown up big in the Philippines. You need to know the Philippines market really, really well. You need to know all of these things that matter in the Philippines market to the gamers, right? Sitting in India, I know that's difficult to do, but that needs to be baked into your DNA. You also have the end of the year, and this is something that not a lot of people know, but anybody who's coming from a advertising background will tell you all the brand marketeers are forced to spend a lot of their money at the end of the year, which means O&D quarter is going to be big for two things. One is it's going to increase your cost of customer acquisition. It's also going to reward you well in terms of the number of users and their monetization. So good hack would be to kind of get your Q3 ramped up, calendar Q3 ramped up with users, so that when they retain and when they are engaging in O&D, you tend to reap the benefits of a monetizable user through ad monetization, right? You need to curate a deck. Make it a practice at least once a month. You just sit, you understand your demographics, and you understand what the game is all about, engagement metrics. You understand what sort of avails are there for the various ad units. If you don't understand this, tomorrow when a marketer comes and talks to you from a brand, you're going to not be able to sell your game. You need to be a seller of your game as well. And since mobile as a medium does not heavily rely on somebody purchasing the game, it relies heavily on somebody advertising in the game. And if you don't know how to position your game, how to pitch the game, then you are losing the battle there. So this is a short exercise where we peel the onion. We try to understand how average revenue per daily active user kind of, if there's an increase, how to see where the increase comes from. So initially we see the increase which is observed in March, and then you begin asking yourself questions, right? Which users affect the change, and was this because of any changes you made in the campaign in the running month? So clearly you haven't made any changes in the campaign that you did in the running month. So you go down to the next question, which is, where is the revenue coming from? Is it coming from the March cohort or is it coming from the Feb cohort, right? And then you begin to realize, as you begin answering more questions, that somebody in your team decided to do a free trial which ends in a purchase, and that was actually contributing in March to your increase in revenue. So this sort of drill down analysis needs to happen at every stage for every marketing spend that you make. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to answer the questions. Again, there's a difference, there's a very, very clear difference between branding and marketing. Marketing is really understanding your numbers and understanding what's going to help you succeed. Whereas branding is going to be elements of what people like and don't like, which are little less measurable than what marketing can help you with. So some of the retention benchmarks globally, we see UA retention for day 1, day 7, and day 30. Sorry, that should have been day 30. And we see that this is the drop off, right? And when I said day 30 towards the end, which is your 5, 8, and 6%, this is what I mean by it's very, very hard. And these numbers are from AppsFlyer, guys. So they work with almost 30,000 odd games, at least that's what they published. So these numbers are kind of telling as to how long your users really lie with you for and how to re-engage them and why you should be re-engaging them if you want to beat these benchmarks. Breakdown by territory when it comes to Android and iOS. You'll see that in both Android and iOS, Oceania and North America rank 1 and 2 for, they kind of show the same user behavior. But when it comes to other territories, that changes drastically. So if you're building a game for any of these platforms, these are some of the metrics that you should keep in mind. So the UA metrics, these are the benchmarks for various types of games. If you are looking to build addictive games and engaging games from the get-go, a quick hack would be to build casino, board, or match games, which is your 2048 types. They are highly addictive and they hold the user's attention. Hyper-casual, simulation, action, racing hold the user's attention the least. So you're tasked with then building retention campaigns for these users and then seeing how you want to get these users back. And if these statistics are shocking you, that really goes to show that we really need to start paying attention to the numbers. We really need to start looking at industry reports. And all of this information was free. I didn't pay for any of this. So retention can directly impact ad revenue and the cost of acquiring a user. Because when you want a retained user, when you want an engaged user, you typically start measuring whether my strategy is working or not and whether it's giving me what I want. Some of the engagement benchmarks. In North America, multiplayer and casino games, they have a really good session length of over 15 minutes for their top 25% of their users. And this is classified as top 25%, median, and bottom 25%, right? And even in the bottom 25% of the above genres, you see the longest session durations compared to any other genre. And this kind of even took me back, and now I begin to understand why RMG is so big in India and across the globe. And you'll see some countrywide matrices in the next slides. So UA engagement in Europe, you see that in Europe, unlike other regions, casino games don't exhibit, but card games do. Again, real money gaming trumps wherever you go in holding the user's attention. And the median for card games does not even come down from the median of casino games, which is great. So if you're going for a European market, you should clearly focus on building card games, as that seems to be doing well. That also kind of takes away from the fact that there's an aging population there. While they may not enjoy casino so much, they might enjoy card games because it's a great way to sit with a glass of wine and probably play a card game. The engagement in Asia is kind of different, but not too much deviation from the norm, where in Asia, you have casino games that hold almost 23% of 23 minutes of the user's attention in the top 25% category of the games that succeed. And comparing that to the median and time spent is only seconded by multiplayer games, right? For other genres, we don't see this go beyond the 5-minute mark, and that's kind of where I'll leave you with. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Yes.
Yeah, 1 second. Just give you a mic. Can you get a mic, please, there?
So you can start with your name and then your question, but I heard you. Just.
My name is Rayani Harsh, and I want you to elaborate on sponsorship opportunities from ad revenue, because this is something I heard first time.
Right. So see, when your game gets to a critical mass of maybe 10 to 15 to 20 million downloads, then you know that you have a daily active user base of maybe 300 to 400,000 users across the month, or monthly active user base maybe, right? And when you begin to have that, and when those users are engaging, right, you have the number of uniques that you can begin calculating, unique number of users. And especially if you're in a category, like let's say hockey. I don't want to take cricket because that's too cliche, but let's say hockey. Or if you want to say you have a kids game, right? Then these people definitely want to advertise. Let's say for a kids game, Nestle will want to put in the money on your app, right? To try and say wherever there is a spot in the game where the baby finds a bottle of juice, let's say it's a baby exploration game, baby's day out. A baby finds a bottle of juice, that's a Nestle juice. And everything in the game is Nestle, right? And they'll pay you a good amount of money. And you can have these contracts for 6 months or a year. And then you calculate how many opportunities there are for Nestle to advertise. And then you also throw in some clickable media like your interstitials or your rewarded videos as well. Make that available for Nestle while keeping some available for players like Google, Meta, etc., whoever you work with for monetization.
Thank you.
I hope I've left you with a lot of thoughts, and feel free to talk to me. I'll be there in the event all through the day. So happy to answer your questions. And we do a lot of the scale up for Nazara. So happy to engage with Shreyas.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Shravan. I would now like to call Dr. KK Singh. Shravan, please hold back. We got a token of appreciation for you as well. I'd like to call Dr. KK Singh. Thanks, Shravan. There were some really cool and different insights. I hope it helps all of you all.